we did our jobs. So.
At the end of the first day, what did your comrades in arms say to you then?
Nothing. Nothing. That was just a day's work. First day of work for me, but for them it was, grab your stuff, you might be able to squeeze a nap in, we're gonna play some cards later, and I couldn't stop thinking about everything like I had just done. Because
but you got invited to play cards.
Yeah, I did. That was nice. It's relaxing.
Yeah, well, it's their way too.
Yeah.
You're now one of us.
Exactly. Yeah, it took a little longer to really feel that way, but not having your ass ridden is a good sign. So yeah. I took that.
Absolutely. In that job or any of those frontline jobs, I mean, you see things happen that you wish you hadn't seen happen.
Mm-hmm.
What were they and how did you handle them?
I remember one time we were on this route. I don't know if I can say the route name, but it was in RC East. I guess it doesn't matter. But anyway, so the route had a lot of 90-degree angles. It had one going to the right, and then after maybe 200 yards, another one going to the left. And they were all lined by trees on the left-hand side, so we couldn't see beyond. But we were in a position where we had to do like very slow particular movements because we had such large vehicles. So maneuvering in these 90-degree turns was difficult. Plus, it was known for having heavy contact on this actual street. But all the contact that we recorded or had recorded for us were all incidents involving IEDs. So we weren't looking for any one particular. We were looking for something. But having these trees to our left prevented us from seeing anything. So it kind of caught us blindsided when one day there's a house that's like, when I say house, I mean like a little mud hut. But it was probably 200 yards off the beaten path. And an IED went off around the second turn, and we all just stopped and froze and just watched the smoke come up from the corner around over top of the trees. And because my vehicle was designed to detect, the first thing that came over the mic was push forward and make sure that it's clear for us to go in and find out what the hell's going on. And I just froze. I froze for like what seemed like a long time, but I think it was like 5 seconds because I just needed to think about what was going on because we don't know what's going on over here, but the first person that's being told to go in and make sure that it's safe for everyone else is me. And this is like my third day on the job. And I remember this specifically, just the way that I moved, the way that I spoke on the radio, the way that I responded, the way that I pushed the gas and started to move forward was nothing like I thought I would be able to do, but everything like I was trained to do. It was weird. I just felt like a robot at that time.
Training.
Yeah, that was the first time I can probably say my training kicked in and really, I didn't even think about it until like a month or two later. Like, wow, wow.
What did you find?
What we found was a big hole that had been accidentally detonated prematurely, or I guess, yeah. So the insurgents over there at the time that I was there, they were using old starter solenoids and like cutting off the little metal brackets so they could unwind all of the copper. And they would use that essentially as a line to be able to carry the current to set off a bomb or any type of homemade device they set up for anyone traveling down the road. Well, because of the trees and the way we were moving in those 90-degree angles, it was hard to tell exactly what location we were at on the road. And so it was detonated early. So when I pulled up to that point and saw that hole and drove over it to make sure nothing else was in it, and I looked to my left, I could see what I felt like was that guy, that person that set that off. Just based on their activity and the fact that they were running and then they stopped and they looked and then they ducked down and hid in the grass. So I reported that. Yeah. Because that wire isn't but so long. You're not going to have to look 1,800 meters to find out where the end of that wire is if someone's standing at it. But just right in the middle of this field was what I believed at the time to be the individual responsible for that explosion. So I called it up.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you, that big scar on your leg from over there?
It is not. It is not. I'm actually a mountain biker.
Makes me hurt to see it.
Yeah, I remember this girl that we worked with. I forget her name. But anyway, she said that when she got home and her fiance got home, she felt like because she had been in such great danger and made it out without being harmed, that she just had an overwhelming sense of or a need for security. And he, on the other hand, because he had been in harm's way and in such imminent danger, and had come out unscathed, essentially, physically at least, that he felt like he was on top of the world and couldn't be stopped. So he wanted to go ride a motorcycle on one wheel, and she just wanted to, just be at home with the doors locked. And I saw the way that people reacted later, but in the moment, you don't think about your reaction, you just think about your action, and that's it. So every single day is like an empty canvas. You're not concerned with the previous day unless it affects the way you're going to operate that day. And so when people ask me, oh, well, how was your deployment? I just think, that's like me asking you, how was it from the age of 17 to the age of 18? How was that year for you? Could you really compile 365 days of activity of any type into a sentence or word like good? So I usually don't answer those questions.
Day after day.
Yeah. And I don't know what kind of methods. Apparently we're a growing army, and this isn't the first fight we've ever been in, but everything on the battlefield doesn't make sense, nor does it have to. So I think that the biggest thing I had to get over was thinking that something should be done differently that I didn't have control of. That was difficult for me to understand, to get over, because there were plenty of things I would have done differently, but those weren't my calls to make. And if I involved myself in decision-making process that were above my pay grade, I would simply impede the progress of the mission, and that I had to deal with, Yeah.
Did you know basically when you were going to be leaving?
Yes. I knew the exact date that I was going to be on leave. I knew the date that we were going to be receiving what we call the incoming, or the left seat, right seat, or the people that were going to take our jobs. I knew those 2 dates. And so even though one was more close than the other, or they didn't come fast enough, I did find some calmness and understanding and knowing that we had a job to do, and it had a start and a stop time. That made a huge difference. Made a huge difference. Because then you can focus, then you can plan. If you don't know how long you're going to be doing something or what to expect while you're doing it, it affects you mentally in a way that, can kind of keep you from doing your job to your best of your ability.
Do you do a countdown calendar?
Sometimes it wasn't worth it. You know, it's like if you focus too much on the light at the end of the tunnel, you're gonna step on a snake. So sometimes it's just better to understand where you're at, what we call embrace the suck. Yeah, you don't like it, but you're here. Get to know the people you're with, and take care of one another and yourself until that day comes.
Everybody make it back?
No. We lost, all total, we lost, it was Sergeant Adams. He was from the 541st Engineer Company out of Bamberg, Germany. We believe it was an EFP, but it could have been an RPG that contacted the side of the passenger side glass of his vehicle, and the shrapnel wounds, he couldn't sustain the shrapnel wounds and passed. And in an earlier part of that same conflict, but before I deployed with this group, two others, Sergeant Banks and another soldier that I didn't know too well, but they were part of my company. I met Sergeant Banks once, and 2 months later I learned that he had died. And then next thing you know, I'm headed over there to where he came from, or where he was. So when they brought the body back of Sergeant Adams, at that time I was coming back from leave. And, you know, I had been attached to this company not knowing anyone until I got there. So I think that when we were in the formation, when they brought the body out on the airway, I was crying like a little baby. I felt like I don't know, just he's got a family. You know, these are those risks that you take. And he took that risk. It's a hell of a thing to have to do. But at the same time, it just it's hard for a group of people to continue doing what they're doing when they lose one of their own. And that's another thing that the enemy preys on. A lot of the tactics and techniques that our enemy is using is based off of our compassion for other humans. And to see that being used against us successfully, that's tough. That's tough.
Yeah, because you don't want to give it up.
And you don't want
to,
and you don't want to hate another human because they're doing what they think is right when you're doing what you think is right. There's no winners. There are no winners.
Yeah, it is the fruitless battle.
Yeah.
And then the next day, or that very day, you have to go right back out.
Yeah, sometimes a couple hours later. I mean, there were times when we had to go from one point A to point B, and it was so bad going through, so filled with activity and firefights and contact with insurgents and I'll say other because sometimes we couldn't even identify the enemy because we'd be facing an IED that was left at a time unknown in a place we didn't know until it happened, in a location that we weren't sure of, and there was just so much uncertainty that a lot of times we didn't even see the enemy we were fighting. So going from point A to point B and having to deal with things like that, and then knowing that you have to come back through because your job is to keep the places and the roads between these 2 points open, that's just like going through hell and then turning around and coming right back to make sure hell is still hot. That sucks. That sucks a lot.
How was downtime over there? Well, there's not a lot of downtime.
There's not. But I found a nice little hobby, cigar smoking. I found a company called Cigar International that shipped out of New Jersey, and I mean, if you order from them, they'd ship it within probably an hour. And I could have it in 4 days. So if I order cigars on a Monday by 2 o'clock, they'll be in my hand in Afghanistan Thursday after they left the States. I mean, that's awesome. Because with that weather, they'll go into shock, and so I was able to get quality domestic cigars. And so my downtime, I just like to think and just look, and just observe relationships within my company. Because granted, I'm filling a position and a duty as a combat engineer, but I'm a trained human resource specialist. And I handle finance matters. So in my downtime, I was working on getting some of these guys promoted, handling their pay issues. Because I had come from the administrative and logistics operations center, I'd go straight over to their talk and find out how they're tracking the battle, make sure they have details that they need to know, how to do overlays so they can see and understand more of what we're seeing and understanding outside of what we say on the radio, so they can get a better picture and make better decisions for us, and just getting the feedback in there. And then after that, that was my downtime. It's just making sure that I was doing everything I possibly knew how to do to the best of my ability. And then outside of that, smoke a cigar and have a bottle of water and get some sleep.
Tell me about coming home.
Coming home was, to me, just another thing on the calendar. You're doing this mission this day, you're doing this day. On these 2 weeks, you'll be in transit. On that day, you'll be coming home. And it's highly anticipated because you haven't been home in a while. And then when you get there, you want to do all the things you used to do. So I went to my old watering hole. I rented a car and I drove down to Atlanta to visit some of my distant family. Went out to the house I grew up at and just kind of walked around the yard and walked through the woods like I used to. Went to see our old tree stand where we used to hunt and was